Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. In the last episode of this gas progression system, we added the basic gas system into the game so we can code in everything we need, and we've just made it print out the health by default. But what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to achieve in this series, whilst talking about how you can do it yourself, we're going to add some basic areas where we can choose the effect that we want to apply, like increasing fat, decreasing fat, increasing strength, and all that other stuff. And then we're going to create a very basic UI just on the screen, just so we can see it in progress in real time. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is just recap how you add your own attributes into the system, new ones if you want. And depending what game you're going for, this can vary for you doing a couple to a huge amount. So if you look at something like Crackdown, that only has a few stats. You have your health, your armor, your stamina, and then you have driving skill, explosion skill, melee skill, gun skill, all that other stuff, right? It's like 10 max, right? But then if you compare it to something like RimWorld, they have all of these traits, and each trait has a bunch of attributes assigned to it, like mood or darkness, and there's tons of them in this game, hundreds and hundreds of attributes that make this. But that's what this game is. It's an advanced colony organization system. You have a lot of traits. Even San Andreas has very basic traits like your fatness, stamina, and stuff like that, right? So the icons I've added are these basic ones here from the Noun project. The Noun project's not sponsored, I just really like the website. It's this website here, and you basically come and search. They've got something like 10 million icons you can go and use. You can pay monthly if you want to get it for free, or you have to attribute them, but that's fine. I always stick the attributes in my credits anyway, so that's fine. But there's a bunch of stuff here, and I just basically came and searched for my attribute. So say if we were doing driving skill, I'm not, but we'll see we've got a bunch of icons. You can download it, right? Click into it, select attribution required, click download. It has the caption. I delete that and I put that in my actual credits so it is attributed. So the icons I've gone for are these ones here. Let's open them all up. So I've got the strength one because I figured if we add something very basic like combat fury, and when you punch, we deal the strength up or something like that. Stamina, so I've got running, jumping, because then we can make them jump a lot higher. I've got health, because I think that'll be a good one. And I've got fat, so we can make you over and eat. So it's like GTA. And I think that gives us a nice variety of different ones to try. So I'm just going to come back to the C++, and we already have the health and the max health. And the way you have to think about it with the attributes is, can they recover? Are they an attribute that goes down and back up, like health? Or are they one where it's a set value? So for health, it does go down and up. So it's got health and max health. You've got the stamina, which does go down, and I haven't put a max stamina in, so we are actually going to come and add a max stamina in now. And super quickly, I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to open a text editor up, paste it in. I'm going to Control R or Control H, whichever one it is. I'm going to search for health. I'm going to replace it with stamina. And I'm going to click replace. I can now copy all of that and just paste it below here, look. See, super easy. We now have max stamina. So let's add some of our other ones then. So fat is one that isn't going to go up and down rapidly. That's what I mean. You can't recover it. It's a set value. You are 20% fat. You are 50% fat. You're not 20% fat, then it goes down to 10%, then back up to 50%. It's not a moving one. So we don't need a max fat. You just are that fat. That's what we're going for. So I'll just copy these 5 lines here, including the comment 6, paste it at the bottom. This will be fat, and you just basically replacing every word that says stamina with fat, really. And that's it. You've added a new attribute. That simple. There is some additional code you have to add in the C++. If you have max values, there are a little bit more. So we've already got examples here. So we have the health one here, and all it does is clamp the health to the max health so it can't go above it. So we're going to copy that line and paste it into stamina because we've just added that in. So set stamina, and we will clamp it by get stamina by the max stamina. Super simple. And then we broadcast out the delegate, which is how we're going to update the UI later. Now, on the last video, somebody did comment, VonQDev, I hope you are watching as well, about the get gameplay attribute value change delegate. That is a new Unreal thing. And I wasn't aware of it before, but apparently this delegate exists, so you don't have to do all of these individual ones. But there is a caveat. The get gameplay attribute value change delegate gives you all changes to your attribute set, whereas these ones give you fine-grained control. So if you do want to use the get gameplay attribute value change delegate, you absolutely can. They are both very valid, but that one's only available in 5.4 onwards. Both great values, but yes, thank you for commenting that. I learned something new. Now that we have this, let's add the exact same one for our max stamina. So it'll be get max stamina, and we'll do the same down here. Get max stamina changed, which is our delegate, and get max stamina. Just make sure you change everything. And equally, there's nothing stopping you taking it out, renaming it, and bringing it back in. So the other one I want is the fat one. So I'm just going to copy this final one. I'll copy it into a notepad. I'll Control H stamina, max stamina, I will replace with fat, and we can copy that and just paste it down here like so. Then the other ones for me that I need to do, so I'll just copy this into here, will be fat will be replaced with jump height. I'm going to call it jump height for this one to make it easier. I can copy that out, I can paste it down here. I will also do strength, and we can copy this one down here again. And I can come back to the attribute set, and we're basically just going to do the same thing again. Paste it into there, replace fat with strength, and then I can finally replace one more with the jump height, like so, and I can paste it in there. So that's pretty much how you add new attributes. Really, really simple to do. You can technically come in and tell Unreal to hot reload, but it has been known in the past to not be super accurate. It tends to be quicker to just close Unreal down and just reboot it. And now we're back in the system, you can see everything will work, but if we come and open up our gas attributes, our data table, we can populate the default values. That's the last thing. So we'll just do add, and again, you have to name it after your attribute. So attribute set dot max stamina, and we can give it a default value. We'll say 10, 0, 10. Then we'll do fat, jump height, and strength. And we can set these to all some basic values. I'll just say the strength is 1 by default. The max jump height is 1. We're not going to do anything with that. And the fat is, we'll say you're not fat, but we'll do it out of percent. So I'm going to do 100%. You are the big, bulky guy. 25%, you're, probably the average human. I don't know. But back to our third-person character. We have all of this here to get the health. You can now also do, say, get fat. And it will get your fat level, right? So let's do our basic UI that automatically updates when these attributes do. And then we can work on the effects. So I'll just come to my UI folder. I'll right-click, user interface, and I'll just do a normal widget blueprint, user widget, and I'll call it WB underscore players HUD. You might already have your own HUD, just use that, I haven't got one. And all I'm going to do is stick a canvas panel in it for now, like so. Then back on my third-person controller, after we've initialized the player and we've done everything we want to, like adding the mapping context, all I'm going to do is drag off and do create widget, and I will do the player's HUD, promote it to a variable just in case, so we'll call players HUD, and now I can just do add to viewport, like that. Play the game and nothing will change, that's fine, but we do have a player's HUD now, so we can add data to it. So the reason we do this is we can now come and create another widget as a child component. So I'll call this one WB underscore player stats, and I'll open this up. And this is where we can start displaying the stats. And I'm thinking it's going to be something dead simple, where we just have the icon on one side, the number on the other. That's it, really. We could even do a semi-progress bar underneath it, or Crackdown style. That's Crackdown's one, but I'm not going to get into doing the advanced UI because it's out of scope of this video, essentially. So I'm just going to add a vertical box in, because we don't need a canvas panel for this. And I'll set it to desired size, so it shrinks down to nothing, because it'll show you what it actually looks like in-game. And then we need to put our stats inside here. So we need a box for every stat. Now the easiest way, believe it or not, is to create another widget, and bear with me on this one, and I'll call it WB underscore single stat. And this is just going to be for one attribute, right? So I'm going to get an image for the icon, and we'll just drop it in there. I'll probably surround that with a horizontal box. So I'll wrap it with a horizontal box. And this image I'll set to just a random icon for now. So I'll do the fat icon. There we go. And then I'm setting this to size to desired again, so we can see what it looks like. So it's there currently. But I'm going to come and grab a text box, so we can do that. drop it next to it, and we'll just set this to 0, 0 for now, like so. I'll probably center align that one, and then we can rescale this image a bit. So instead of being 700, which is a bit big, we'll do 64 by 64. Does that look better? Yeah, that's looking not too bad. We'll probably do 50 by 50. Yeah, that looks a bit better. I'll add a tiny bit of padding. Yeah. And then we'll just rename this just to make it a bit easier. So icon value, right? And then the Crackdown one has a progress bar underneath. So let's wrap this horizontal box with a vertical box. And then we can come and add a very basic progress bar just on the progress bar like that, look. And if we come in and set the value, you can set the percent look and it'll grow up, look. Super simple. We're not doing anything custom. If you've got the UI, it will look 10 times better. But there we go. And that bar is going to be the progression bar to the next value. If you need it, you might not need it. So for example, the fat one probably isn't going to need you when you get into the next one because you can go up and down with that one. Same with the health, but things like stamina, not your actual stamina, but the stamina level, we can take that into account with this one. So now that we've done that and we've named them all, if we make sure everything's ticked as a variable, back on the graph, what we can do on construct and pre-construct, we can grab the icon, we can do set brush from soft texture and we can connect it to both, and we can just promote this to a variable. And by default, we'll call this icon texture. We'll tick this as expose on spawn and it's editable. Click compile and we'll just give it a default of fat for now. So that'll let us set the icon here, but what we'll do for the value is we'll actually bind in this component to the stat it watches. And what I mean by that is we have this component here for a single stat, right? If we come back to player stats, we can now add as many of these stats in as we want. So there's our first one, second, third, fourth, fifth. Yeah, and we can come in and we can set each icon. So health, jump, running, and strength. There's our icons. We can, of course, put a spacer in, which will bump it down a little, make it look a bit better. So if we just come back to single stat, and then get the spacer widget, and under progression, we'll just dump it there, and we'll just say it's something like 5. Compile and save. Back on here, it's got a gap now. Look, see, it looks a bit nicer. So there's all our widgets. And then back on our HUD, we can now add the player stats to it. And I'm thinking we'll just put it anchored to the top, but we'll move it down by 100. Size to context, and we'll probably move it across by 50, something like that, yeah? So it's just floating there. And you can see all your stats. You can even play your game, but it doesn't update yet, right? So what we're going to do, it's good practice in UI design to make everything not linked together the best you can. So, for example, we could have all of our stats on our player controller, and we could link to the stat system and plug it into the UI to update the stats, which goes to the player stats, which goes to the single stat, and we could link it all up from there. That's one way of doing it. Whereas if we do it the other way around, the controller's never going to die, but the UI can reach out to the player controller, get the info, and if the UI dies, then it doesn't matter, because the player controller doesn't need to use it. It's not referencing it. Meaning if somebody goes into the options and unticks UI, it's not going to break the system. And you're not going to have to add loads of checks in, say, is the UI valid? It's just either there or it's not. So it's a good way of building it almost modular if you want. You can never completely sever the connections because you do need to get it, but we can do some bits for it. So what I mean by all of this then is on this single stat here. So what you can do is if we jump back to the parent here, the player stats here, for each of these icons, we know we need to update their value, right? So what I'm going to do on construct, not pre-construct, and then on construct, I can get the player pawn, I can get their ability system component, and I can get their attribute set it to the correct one, so basic attribute set, and then from here we can now assign onto each value we need to. So I can do assign on fat changed, and I can grab, to be easier if I rename some of these, wouldn't it? So I'll call this single stat underscore fat health strength. So I've just gone through and renamed all of those to make it easier to see. But now from here we can drag the fat in, and we can set any value we want. But remember, we're trying to decouple bits best we can. So instead of directly setting the text on here, so what I'm going to do is come into here and add a custom event called update value. And I'll drag our value into it and do set text. And I'll connect it to here. And then on the update value, I'll add an input parameter of new value, which will be a type of float. And we can just connect that across like that and let it automatically convert itself. From the update value, I can drag it up here as well and connect it across to the set brush. And I can promote the new value to a variable as well called default value. And we'll make this instance editable and expose on spawn. And the reason we've done that is now back on the parent here, we can simply drag off of the fact one and do update value, passing in the new value like so. So you can do this for each of your items. So I can drag off and do assign on health changed, and we can just drag the health in, and we can do update value again, passing in all the values like so. Now this is absolutely one way to do it. If you're like in GTA or Crackdown where you have a few set amount of skills, this is a perfectly acceptable way of doing it. And this is the way I'm going to do it for this part now, and potentially in my actual game too. However, if you have a game the size of RimWorld, where you have potentially hundreds of stats, this is going to get really time consuming and will not be your best approach, purely for the amount that there is there, right? So what I'd suggest in that case is absolutely like the commenter suggested that I can't remember earlier, and that's looking into the get gameplay attribute value change delegate. Now it is only available in C++, but if you go to the GAS documentation project, they have a custom value you can plug into yours if you want to, so you could download the project and look at how they do it. That is going to be another way, and you can specifically pick an attribute and go based on those ones. So you might be able to plug it in directly to individual stats like that instead and have one generic reusable one. If you'd like to see me introduce that method, let me know below and we can add it in just as an alternative. But for now, because I'm only doing like 5 attributes, I'm just going to do it manually like this. And this, again, is perfectly acceptable because I know in this instance it's not going to be scaling up. It's not the point of it. And for the last one, we'll just put it in, grab the update value, and connect it all up. So I know this seems a bit wishy-washy the way we've done it, and it can be if you're not used to the UI, but this is called componentized UI, and you do it a lot in websites where you have a singular component that does everything it can and gets very minimal updates. And the only reason we've done it here is because we're using named values, so the fat, the health. We can't really do that in here because this could have any value. This could be fat, this could be strength, this could be stamina. So we do it from the one that knows what each individual one is. However, there is one thing we can do, because now that we've set all of these, whenever we change these values, our UI is now going to update, but we need to give it a default value, and we can build that in. So what I'm going to do is come back across and do get player pawn, get ability system component, but I'm going to drag off and do get attribute value, just like that. And in here, we can set it to whichever value we want, so we'll promote it to a variable called assigned attribute, make it instance editable and expose on spawn, and then only if it's found, because otherwise we've got an error, then we can set the value directly, so I'll just call update value. And that is a better way, so we can actually remove the default value one. That's not a great way. There you go. That's a lot easier now. So that will update all the default values based on what our gas attribute has, and then this will take care of any further changes. So the only other thing we need to do is make sure we come back to here and just assign the correct attribute. So that is fat, health, jump height, stamina, and strength, like so. And we can compile and save. And now when we try it, you see our health has already gone up, and everything else is set to their values to whatever we set them to. So it's working already, we know it is. So now let's actually go through and change these values then. The end goal is to make it so as we're doing the actions, they will update, but we're going to do that in the next video because that's going to be very specific to each individual attribute, so it's a bit more in depth. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to come and create a new effects folder inside our gas folder. I'll right click Blueprint class and I'll search for gameplay effect, and we just want the standard effect, and we'll do select GE, and we will do stamina increasing. So there's a couple of ways effects are going to work. You're going to have some effects that apply instantly, right? So for example, when you're eating food in the game, according to San Andreas, it will be a one-hit fat upgrade, right? It'll increase it a little bit. So those won't be permanent ones. They'll be just a minor bump. Whereas other ones, such as stamina, will be increasing as long as you're running. So they're going to be a more permanent one that is taken off when you stop running. So let's take a look at that first. So I'm going to come and add a new blueprint class for a gameplay effect. And I'll call this one GE Stamina Increasing. And we'll have this screen here. So for ones that are increasing over a prolonged time, it's often better to actually make it infinite, so it always keeps going, and we'll set it to something like every 1 second it increases, right? And then the modifier, we'll open this up, and we'll set our stamina, and we're going to add to it, and you'll notice there's no remove. If you want to remove, you do minus. We'll get to that in a minute. And the modifier magnitude, we will say by 1. So it's going to keep increasing by 1 every 1 second when we apply this. So if we just make a super basic blueprint in here, and I'll set it to a type of trigger. So we want a trigger box, and I'll call it TB for trigger box underscore apply attribute. I want to open it up. On this box here, I'll just set the box extent to be something a bit bigger, like that. So it's almost like a little cube that you can walk into. And I will add a on component begin overlap, and I'll say if the overlap is hit by the get player pawn, add a branch. So if the players run into this, I can get their ability system component, and now I can do apply effect to self. And by self, it means the ability system component it's using, so this one. And then I will promote the vector class to a variable, and we will tick the eyeball and hit compile and save. I'm going to come and make this visible in the editor, just so we can see it when we are playing. So I'll set the line thickness to 5, and I will make sure hidden in game is unticked. That just means we can now drag it into the world and we can see it, right? So if I stick this one there and move it up a bit, we can come and set this to our stamina increasing. And when you play it, you'll notice nothing will actually happen because I've made a slight boo-boo. But you see, nothing's increasing. But it actually is. If you press the apostrophe key on your keyboard, you'll get this debug view here. If you look at an NPC, it'll do it to them as well. And you can see across the top, we've got different letters. So where it, I can't really show you this with my mouse, can I? Yeah, there we go. So here, look, you can see these keys here. They're your numpad keys. So because 3 is green, that means the abilities are active. If I press 3 on my numpad in the game, it will hide. And I've pressed 2 by accident. So you can see I can put 0 on for the nav mesh, 5 on for the perception system, but they're not there. So if I put the ability system on there, look, you can see we've got some further tags below where we can shift click something to show more or less. So if I shift 1 not on the numpad, you'll see it will hide the tags and the abilities. But if you look at the effects, you can see the stamina is actually increasing, but it's not on here. Why? And that's because our max stamina is 10. So if I come in and set our max stamina to say 20, and now if we run in and do it, you'll see that it will indeed start increasing. There you go. And if I leave, it won't stop. And that's because we've not deactivated it yet. So we need to remove that effect from the player. So there are a couple of ways to do this depending on how you want to do it. So we'll just firstly come and add in our on component end overlap, and we'll do the check for the player like normal. And then we can get the ability system component just from the player, just like we did. But you'll notice there isn't a standard remove effect by class or anything like that. And that's because effects can stack, they can do anything you want. So we need to be more specific for what we want to remove. You can technically use a handle to do it, but they're not available in blueprints, unfortunately. So what you could do is store the one up here if you want to, and then remove that. That's one good way of doing it. But the other way I'm going to show to do it, which is the more common approaching the gas system, is to actually remove the effect with tags. And what this does is it uses gameplay tags plugin to remove them based on the type of tag they are. So the reason we're doing it this way is it will enforce us to apply tags to all the attributes where we're going to upgrade, all the effects. And say you get hit with poison, fire, stun, electric, and lava, some bad things, and then you take a single potion. That single potion can wipe all of those out from one tag. It doesn't have to search every ability. So it groups them really, really nicely. So I'm just going to come and add a basic tag in here, and I'll just call it attributes dot effects dot stamina upgrading. I'll set the source and click add tag. We are just doing stamina upgrading for now, but we will adjust it in a moment. And then back on our actual effect here, we can add a component and do tags this effect has. We can say this effect has the tag of stamina upgrading. Compile and save. Now, if we apply it this time, and we'll put our debug view back on, we can run into it, and you can see it's applying it, but as soon as we leave, the effect has now gone, because that tag is part of it and has removed it. How cool is that? So let's make it more generic again. So back on our TB, we'll just promote this to a variable called tags to remove by, make it instance editable, and compile and save. So now this trigger box can pretty much do anything, really. So let's make it a bit more obvious for debugging purposes. I'll add a text render to it, and we'll just move this up a bit, like so. I'll center align it just to make it look nicer and make it red. This is purely for debugging, by the way. And then on construct, I'll just grab the text render, set text, and the value will be our gameplay tag, and I will break on this and just get the first tag, because you can technically remove multiple tags if you want to as well. And then from here, I will do get tag name and just plug that into there like so. You can tidy it up, but for debugging it's fine. And all that's going to do is just put the tag there so we can read which box is going to do what. So that one's going to upgrade our stamina. Let's duplicate this across here, and we will say this one will be, add a subtag, strength upgrading. So this will be like if you're at the gym, you're working out, and it's going to upgrade it the longer you sit doing it. And we need to create an effect for that one. So we'll come back and change it to strength increasing. And all we have to do is set the strength to there for the tag and make sure it updates to correct attribute strength. Then come and set it in here. So you will be our new strength increasing. And if we come and play it this time, you can see they're both there. If I run into this one, our strength is going to start increasing. And we don't have a max strength, so that can in theory go forever, which is good. We come out, it stops, come back into here, the stamina will increase, we come out. So it's looking pretty good so far. But what about the instant ones that you want? Like the fat, where you're eating, you eat once, it increases once, that's it, you're done. So this one is a little bit different, so we're going to cover that as well. I'm just going to duplicate one of the effects, just so save setting everything up. GE fat increase, I'm going to specifically call it increase instead of increasing to make it different. And instead of infinite, we're just going to do instant. So it's a one-time effect, right? You can technically apply a tag if you want to, so that might be good if you have armor of no weight gain. You can disable tags that try to apply it, so we'll add it in just for consistency. Fat upgrading, but we probably won't use it. And then I will do fat here, and again we'll just set it to 1, right? Then we can duplicate this across, and this will be our food cart if you wish. Fat upgrading, and this will be our fat increase like so. And now if we come and hit this one, the fat will increase, but only once. That's it. That's all it does. You come out, we come back up. You know, GTA San Andreas, can I interest you in a burger, sir? Yes. The animation plays, your fat increases. That's it. We can also do that where if you don't run around a lot. So we'll add a sprint option later where you run a bit faster. If you never sprint, we can make the fat periodically increase. And this is where it starts to get a bit tricky next time, because it really does depend on what attributes you're adding. But that's pretty much how we can handle adding effects like that. So if you come to the gym and you do weight training, you can have this going on every time they do a rep. And then when they exit, it stops increasing. Stamina upgrading, if they're running on the treadmill, or what we'll do next time is the more they run around, we can periodically have it upgrade like that. You can see it is indeed increasing. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. So there is the next part to this series where we've tested out effects and learned how they work. In the next episode, we're going to look at actually applying these in real time. So the more you run around, the more it does it. The fat will be the less you run around. So we've got to figure out some logic on how we want that specifically to work. I'm thinking we'll do that either like San Andreas, where you just do it based on food, but we make food mandatory in the game, for example. Or we make it if you don't sprint for long enough. So if you start sprinting, your stamina increases. If you stop sprinting, your fat slowly starts to increase. Which is 2 options what we can look at doing. So one thing I've just realised after recording all of this video is we've made this really confusing. Well, I've made this really confusing. So we will correct this in the next episode now to not make it done in vain. But we actually need a third stamina option. Because if you think about it, we have regular stamina, which is how far you can sprint. That will eventually reach 0, so you can't sprint anymore. But you can only ever upgrade it to max stamina. This one is increasing your actual stamina, which is not what we need. We need the stamina XP, which reaches the next stamina level. Just adding this on to the end of the video so people don't comment thinking, oh my god, we've missed something massive. No. We will do it. So we will have normal stamina, max stamina, and then we'll have a stamina level and potentially even a stamina progress, so we can fill the progress bar in. The progress will increase as we stand here until it reaches the level, then the level ticks up, and that's where we can run a bit faster. We will look at that in the next episode. I'm sorry I missed that in this one, but what we have here is key to what we need to do. So thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. If you've got anything else you'd like to see, please let me know. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.